Morning, everybody. The January 23, 2020 Veterans Land Board meeting will now come to order. Seeing that we have a quorum, we can begin today's agenda. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from our last meeting on October 30, 2019. After the board has had a chance to review the minutes and assuming no questions, comments, or objections at this time, and I could entertain a motion to confirm the minutes for the record.
Move approval.
Second, motion is made second to approve the minutes. Next item on the agenda is number 2, consideration possible action on loan rates for the housing program.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, for the record, Rusty Martin, Chief Investment Officer. As you're aware, this is an item that we put on the agenda for each meeting so we can have a discussion about rates in the housing program. Demand in 2019, fiscal year 2019, was, as you know, was significantly above normal levels. That was in terms of both total dollar amount and the number of loans. We averaged about $67 million per month and finished the year around $800 million, well above normal levels. Since that time, we've been setting the base rate at 15 basis points below the benchmark for the last 9 months, and it has begun producing the desired decrease in overall loan demand. For example, for the period July through December of 2019, we were averaging about $43 million per month. So I would say that's around the low middle of what I would call the normal range. And given that the fact that this time of year is a slower period for us anyway, I think that we will wind up at the end of the fiscal year probably right in the middle of our normal range. Therefore, I'm not recommending any changes at this time. We will continue to monitor the monthly loan demand and report back to you periodically. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but again, this is a non-action item this time.
Any questions?
No questions.
Thank you for that. Next item on the agenda is number 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, this item is our quarterly investment report for the period ended September 30, 2019. It is also a non-voting item, informational only. I'll give you a brief executive summary of economic conditions and then talk about the performance of the portfolio. Third quarter 2019, U.S. GDP increased at an annual rate of 2.1%. That was after increasing 2% in the second quarter. The unemployment rate ended the quarter at 3.5%, down from 3.7% at the end of the second quarter. The Fed was active, citing weakness in business fixed income, investment, and exports. The FOMC lowered its target Fed funds rate twice during the quarter. The first time it reduced it from a range of 2.25% to 2.5% down to 2% to 2.25%. That was at its July meeting. And then it went down from 2 to 2.5% down to 1.75% to 2% at its September meeting. They also reaffirmed the continuation of their balance sheet normalization program, which they had launched in October of 2017. And in that program, they roll over at auction all of the amount of maturing Treasury securities, and then they continue reinvesting up to $20 billion per month of the principal payments from agency debt and agency mortgage-backed securities and Treasury securities, with the amount of principal payments from the Fed's holdings of agency debt and agency mortgage-backed securities received during each month that exceeds $20 billion being reinvested in agency mortgage-backed securities. They also agreed that the timing and size of any future adjustments to the Fed funds target range will depend upon their assessment of realized and expected economic conditions relative to its maximum employment objective and symmetric 2% inflation objective. As far as our portfolio is concerned, as you know, it's 100% fixed income. Strategically, we focus primarily on providing the liquidity and cash flow necessary to meet continued loan purchase and debt service requirements. And we focus only secondarily on maximizing total return. Portfolio is comprised primarily of high-quality commercial paper and short to medium-term Treasury, agency, corporate, and taxable municipal bonds. Portfolio's duration increased during the period from 3.66 to 4.29 years. Our targeted average duration is approximately 3.5 to 4 years. The allocation that you see on the second page of the report, I would just point out that it's been now 1 year since we introduced corporate bonds into the mix, and we have about 10% of the portfolio now invested in corporate bonds. So that is certainly boosting our income in the overall portfolio. Turning to the next page, you can go over the numbers. It was a very strong quarter. If you look in Table 2, total return 1.33% versus 0.57 on the benchmark. Total return year to date 4.56 versus 2.66 on the benchmark, and 1 year total return almost 6%, 5.91% versus 3.76 on the benchmark. Yield to maturity ended the quarter 2.11% versus 1.73 on the benchmark. So it was a very strong quarter, very strong 1 year return, significant outperformance. Again, that's sort of icing on the cake because, again, this portfolio is designed primarily to make sure that we have liquidity that we need to fund loan purchases and make debt service requirements. This is a non-voting item, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Rusty, can you refresh my recollection on the corporate bond shift a year ago? Did we reinterpret statute to allow us to start investing in that, or was that a modification we were able to achieve last legislative session?
So the board is allowed to invest in anything that the state comptroller invests in, and at some point in the past they added corporate bonds to their investment, authorized investments. And so we just changed our investment policy to also incorporate that in our investment policy, and we put a limit of 20% of the portfolio. So we're at about halfway there now, 10%. Corporate, interest rates have come down a lot since the Fed started its lowering program. It did lower twice in that quarter. It also lowered once again after that. And that had tremendous impact, upward pressure on prices. So while it's good for the portfolio, when you start to look to buy new things, you have to really take into account what kind of price compression has happened. So I don't know that we'll significantly expand the corporate part of the portfolio right now. Obviously we look at it every day, but prices are really high. They're very rich right now. So we've been mostly focused on rolling things over in the short part of the very short part of the portfolio, say 3 to 6 months, because that's where the highest yields are right now.
Rusty, I thought that the year-to-date of 5.91%, 1 year total return rather, 5.91% was very impressive. In today's investment climate, that's extraordinary.
Thank you. Well, sometimes it works that way. Rates go up significantly, it will work the other way. If we have a similar duration, that's part of our job is managing that duration. So we take advantage of those things when we think there's going to be a significant change. But I appreciate the comment.
Good job.
Any other questions?
No.
Thank you for that. If you'll indulge me, we will conduct a little switcheroo on the agenda and move item number 6 before items 4 and 5, if at all possible, mainly to adopt changes to our policies relating to contract engagement on behalf of the Veterans Land Board. It was a recommendation from Sunset after that exhaustive process in 2019.
Thank you,
Council?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. Jeff Gordon, Texas General Land Office General Counsel. As you said, item number 6 is your consideration and possible adoption of 2 policies in your materials, the contract approval policy and contract monitoring, compliance, and training policy. As you stated, Mr. Chairman, last year VLB went through Sunset. Sunset Advisory Committee made a number of recommendations adopted eventually by the Joint Legislative Sunset Committee. Some of those recommendations were subsequently adopted through legislation. Others were management actions that VLB or GLO were instructed to undertake. excuse me, these policies you have before you resolve several of those required management actions, specifically directing VLB to adopt policies regarding the review of major VLB contracts with vendors, and second, to direct VLB to develop, adopt, and implement policies relating to contract management, monitoring, compliance, and training with respect to VLB contracts with vendors. The policies that you have in your materials were developed by GLO staff, and in fact, we have been following them internally for several months now, prior to, even before we brought these to your, for your approval today. Mr. Chairman, you will note that these policies are very similar to policies that the school land board adopted earlier this week, so we are trying to maintain consistency across the agency. Very generally speaking, and the policies provide, the major points are: Contract Management Division of the GLO will identify major contracts, which is defined as those with a value over $1 million. Bring those to the attention of the GLO Chief Clerk and General Counsel for review, and if it is deemed to be a major contract or a material change to such a major contract, then it'll be placed on the VLB's agenda for review and possible approval. In addition, the Director of Contract Management Division shall also provide an annual report to this board on the status of all those current VLB contracts. The details of that report is listed in the policy is what you'll be provided with. It provides for training of all GLO project managers on VLB contracts, which is something, again, we are already doing, but this just codifies and confirms that it covers VLB contracts for such training. And then it also details contract monitoring and compliance procedures that will be followed by all of the sections of VLB, which includes the cemeteries, the homes, and the land and housing loan programs. Adoption of these policies satisfies several of the management actions that were directed of the Veterans Land Board by Sunset Commission. We have some members of staff here who helped write these policies, including Kelly McBride, Director of the Contract Management Division, if the board has any questions. But staff does recommend you approve these policies that are in your materials for item number 6 as in furtherance of the Sunset's management actions. And happy to answer any questions.
How does the proposed policy deal with extension of agreements in terms of renewals and?
Well, it will, a material change could extend, if you look in the definition of material change, it could include extending the length of or postponing the completion of a contract for 6 months or more. In addition, if you increase total consideration over 10%, that could constitute a material change.
So that would come back before the board?
That could, yes.
When I read it, I was impressed by how well integrated everything is. It seems to be well regulated. Somebody's put a lot of thought into this.
I'm not taking any credit for that. My staff, Kelly, as well as Heather De La Garza, who handles our VLB legal matters, both had roles in this and helped write these policies. In addition, working with VLB staff members and
They're the ones who have a slight glow around their head.
yes, they deserve the credit.
It's their halo. Very good. Thank you. Thank you.
So I propose adopting that policy. I'll also move.
Second it.
Motion is made, second, and carries unanimously to approve item number 6. Now we can approve some contracts under this new policy officially. Next item is number 4.
Rusty Martin, Chief Investment Officer. Good thing we have that new policy so we can approve these contracts. If it please the board, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to take items 4 and 5 together since they are interrelated. Approval of these 2 agenda items will approve the management and operation agreements for the Texas State Veterans Homes that are located in Temple, Floresville, Big Spring, and McAllen, which are operated by Carians of Texas Temple Limited. They operate the Temple Home. Carians of Texas Limited, they operate the Floresville Home. And Touchstone Veterans Management Limited, who operates Big Spring and McAllen. They all of those entities are under the Touchstone umbrella, and we have a long-term relationship with all of them as far as the operation of the Veterans Homes is concerned. So, speaking of the new contract policy, in accordance with the provisions of that new contract policy, we're going to present two contracts for board approval. So a little background, staff recently completed negotiations related to management and operations fees regarding the initial management and operations agreements with Cairns of Texas Temple and Cairns of Texas associated with the homes located in Temple and Floresville, and that was following a request for proposals, or RFP process. Also, the second contract is a renewal of the existing management and operations agreements with Touchstone Veterans Management that's associated with the homes located in McAllen and Big Spring. So taking each one of the contracts separately, we'll go over the financial terms. The first one, Cairns of Texas Temple, so that's the Temple home. The term of the agreement is November 1st, 2019 through August 31, 22, basically a 3-year agreement. You can see the table that has the individual components related to the fees, but the bottom line is that contract over the period of time that it's in effect is going to be around $30 million. The Floresville home, operated by Cairns of Texas, same period, November 1st, 2019 through August 31st, 2022. Again, you can see the chart that has individual components related to the fees. That estimated total cost for the period would be about $32.2 million. As far as Touchstone Veterans Management, operating in McAllen and Big Spring, that period is September 1st, 2019 through August 31st, 22. Again, you can see the individual tables that show the components of the fees. McAllen is estimated to be about $29.3 million over the period, and Big Spring about $25.7 million. The reason Big Spring is lower is primarily because it has a much smaller population than the other homes have. In addition, all of the agreements provide for the operators to provide all required services in accordance with the laws and regulations that govern the homes, to make relevant representations and warranties regarding the authority to enter into the agreements and to provide the necessary services, also to develop and implement all necessary administrative systems, and to develop and implement appropriate fiscal and accounting systems and procedures, and finally, to indemnify the VLB for all liability claims related to the operator's provision of those services under the agreements. Therefore, staff is recommending that the board approve first the management and operations agreement with Cairns of Texas Temple Limited and Cairns of Texas respectively for the management and operations of the homes located in Floresville and Temple. And secondly, the management and operations agreements with Touchstone Veterans Management Limited for the management and operations of the homes located in Big Spring and McAllen, Texas. I'm happy to take any questions on either of the two items, agenda item 4 or 5 at this time.
Rusty, I have a quick question for information for me, because I haven't encountered these contracts before. I note that the variable rate per day for the Medicare is all the same, and I understand that's set by Medicare, but I didn't know really what the variable rate means, but for the non-Medicare amounts, they vary. Can you just give me a general ballpark about what a variable rate is for non-Medicare patients?
Sure. So the overall compensation is based on two components. It's based on a daily component that is tied to the census. So there's a variable rate per resident per day tied to the census. There's also a fixed component of a fixed fee per month. Mm-hmm. So it's a combination of those two. So the Medicare residents, obviously there's a different kind of care associated with those residents, typically higher. The cost is higher, so that's why it's higher than all the others. As far as the variability is concerned, You know, there are individual geographic reasons for variability and the cost associated with the labor in those markets. Their location can affect the cost associated with procuring supplies and things like that. So there's going to be a lot of variability in
Right,
those.
so the variability really isn't patient-specific, it's location-specific and what you have to do.
That
to
is
provide the
correct.
care. I understand now. Thank you very much. Move approval.
I'll second it. Motion is made, second, and carries unanimously to approve items 4 and 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Rusty. Next item on the agenda is number 7. We're back on track here.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Charlotte Mumford. There are no appeals before the board today.
There being no appeals, this is a non-voting item. We could skip ahead to next item, which is number 8.
There were 15 tracks offered during the forfeited land sale and online bidding period of December the 2nd, 2019 through January 21st, 2020. We received a total of 145 bids, resulting in 11 high bids. Staff is requesting that the board award all high bids that meet qualifications for the land program. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions?
No.
I'll go ahead and move.
Second.
Motion is made, second, and carries unanimously to approve item number 8. Next item on the agenda is number 9.
Staff is requesting the board take forfeiture action on the resolution before you, accept accounts where sufficient funds are received to avoid that action. 9 accounts are being presented for forfeiture action today. I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Move approval.
Second, motion is made, second, and carries unanimously to approve item number 9. Next item is number 10.
Staff is requesting board take action on the resolution before you. The resolution lists accounts to be considered for order for sale action today. These 3 accounts will become the tracks for the next forfeited land sale. We are requesting board's authority to pull any account that fully reinstates prior to the sale date.
Move approval.
Second, motion is made, second, and carries unanimously to approve item number 10. Next item is number 11.
Staff is requesting that the board set the next quarterly electronic forfeited land sale bidding period to begin March the 2nd, 2020 at 8 a.m. with a bidding deadline of April 28th, 2020 at 5 p.m.
Move approval.
Second, motion is made, second, carries unanimously to approve item number 11. Next item is number 12.
Staff is recommending loan limit in the Veterans Housing Assistance Program be increased from its current maximum amount of $484,350 to $510,400, beginning with rate locks issued on or after January 24th, 2020. In the memo before you, there's historical data as to the rate changes through the years.
If I could also ask on this, Charlotte, just so I understand the background of this, obviously things progress, sometimes it's statutory things, but for us to go from 484,000 to 510 is probably a great reason, but is this just to keep up with the market primarily?
Yes. Our average loan limit, average loan amount on loans at this time is $281,611. So this change should be minimal to the program.
Okay, and so this is land and homes?
No, just for homes.
The homes, got it. Okay, that should be hopefully enough. Thank you. Move approval.
And just to be clear, on the federal VA side, they are removing their maximum.
That is correct.
We clarified that, and,
Yes, that
okay.
is correct.
And we'll be able to get their data in terms of whether or not there's changes in terms of their loan production from that change in policy.
Will we continue to be able to get VA statistical data? Is that what you're requesting?
Yes.
Yes.
It'll be interesting to see the comparisons as they move forward on that.
Okay.
No other questions for me.
All right, move approval.
Motion is made, second, carries unanimously to approve item number 12. Thanks, Charlotte. There being no further business before the board, the meeting is hereby adjourned. Thank you, everyone.